Hello my wonderful witches. Today I am finally doing my bookshelf tour. So this has been a long time coming because I've been unsure of the logistics. You'll have to forgive me today. I'm a little unwell, so I might sound a bit funny, but you know how sometimes when you feel sick and you only sound funny to yourself and everyone else is like, you sound fine. That might be happening, we'll see. But anyway, I really wanted to get this done today and I figured out how I'm going to do it finally. So there's a lot of books, but also sort of trying to film them all is difficult because the shelves are quite high in the room, as you can see. So what I've decided to do for today is to actually just give you an overview of the library, and then I want to talk to you more deeply about various books as we go along. I keep meaning to go more into books and sort of share more of those videos. I really enjoy reading. And I think it's really helpful when you've got someone, giving different recommendations, or I've read this book and this is what I thought, or, just showing you some different books that are out there, So I want to do more of that with you guys. So for today, instead of going in depth into any of the books that you see here, we're just going to do an overview and then I'll go into various sections and different books as we move ahead. But if you do see anything that you have questions about, please let me know. That will help me know what you want to see and we can talk about that. So we're starting here with a view of the entire library. So I'm actually going to be changing this up probably after today, after I just really wanted to show you first, but I want to organize these a little bit more. So I do have a few different sections, as you can see, but I want to narrow these down a little more into like divination books, astrology books, various different kinds of books, grimoires, all that sort of stuff, kind of to be able to see what I've got a bit more and to be able to reference things a little bit easier too. So in my line of work, I am dipping in and out of books quite a lot. When I share things with people, I share from my own experience, but I always want to make sure that I've got the backing of other people's kind of research and all that sort of stuff as well. I just feel like that's the responsible thing to do. So to give people kind of a wide breadth of information and background and that sort of stuff, kind of to have that solidity when I am teaching something, that it's got a solid background, and then also here's my stuff that I've kind of taken on as well, if that makes sense. So I'm wanting to break up the library a little bit more. I love the way that it looks right now, but I am always bringing in new books. I decided that I wasn't going to do that this year, but that has not been a thing. So perhaps next year. But I really have a passion for books. I have a passion for learning about the craft and getting more information from all these incredible authors that we have out there. So I just feel like so blessed that we live in this time where we have such a wide variety of options when it comes to occult books on every subject that is out there. And I mean, there are a million more that I want to bring into my library as well, but over time, this is something that excites me about the magical path, is that I've got my entire lifetime, and I wish I had many more, to learn all about the craft. So let's jump in with the first section down on the bottom right hand corner. So this is my favorites section. All of the books that you see here are books that when I read them are like 5-star, you know what I mean? Like there was something in them that just hit me when I read them that were like the perfect book at the perfect time. Now, I was wondering recently, would these books stand the test of time for me? So some of them I've read recently, some of them I read many years ago. And I was wondering, would they still be favourites? And I actually went back and read one of them, which was Prime Chaos by Phil Hine, which is in a different section at the moment, which we'll get to soon. But it was one of my favourites, and I discovered on rereading it, it wasn't anymore. So I really loved the start of that book, but sort of towards the middle and the end, it just wasn't for me anymore. Like I just didn't enjoy it that much. I didn't find it a page turner like I did when I had first read it many years ago. So I don't know if all of these books would still be my favorites now, but they certainly were at the time, and there are some that I read recently that I know certainly are. So this is my little favorite section here, and it's all propped up by the complete tales and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. I've talked to you guys a little bit about this book I purchased this when I got myself the Edgar Allan Poe tarot deck, because in the deck it shares a very, very small amount of either the poem or the story that each card is related to. But I'm not familiar, or I wasn't familiar with Poe's work. I didn't grow up with his work. So I wanted to grab myself the book so I could more deeply dive into it. And I find that it's a really nice one for bibliomancy as well. And then moving over here, we have a majority of my tarot books. I have a couple more that are on my desk. Those are the ones that I sort of reach for a little bit more, or have there just in case I want to reach for them, rather. And these are the ones that I have sitting here. So these are, some of these books I've read completely all the way through, and some of them I just reference from time to time. But these are my tarot books. I absolutely love tarot. I have found learning about tarot a little bit of a struggle. I don't know about you guys, but I find many tarot books quite dull, because it's just, you know, you go through each of the 78 cards, you know, in most books, and it's quite difficult to go from A to Z like that. My brain doesn't sort of enjoy that very much, so I find it much easier to dip in and out of books. You know, the study of tarot is one of those lifelong ones, as with many subjects, but I think particularly tarot, being that there's so much symbolism, so much depth in each card, but also that there's 78 of them, you know, in most decks, in a sort of a standard Rider-Waite deck. So these are the books I've got here. Again, I dip in and out, and, you know, there's sort of a wide variety here, but if you are interested in learning tarot, the one that I recommend is WTF is Tarot. What the fuck is tarot, and how do I do it? This one is very down to earth. The start of the book is my favorite that I've ever read of a tarot book. I absolutely love it. And then it does go into each of the cards, but the way that she approaches them is very down to earth, and one that I think is very approachable for a lot of people. And then in this other section here, next to the tarot books, these are the books that I have read and are waiting for me to copy the quotes out of. So now anytime I go through an occult book, I mean any book that I read, but particularly some kind of occult book, I always gather quotes. So I go through with a highlighter. I know that's sacrilegious to many people, but that's what I do. And I collect the quotes. So I have all these note cards where I keep the quotes. And the idea behind the note cards is that I can then reference the quotes very easily and quickly whenever I need them. So this is for future writing projects, and I also use it now in my work. I'll go through and find a quote. I've used it for Instagram as well before, where I'm like, oh, I want to share like a cool witchy quote. So I go through my collection of quotes and pick out a good one and put that in there. So these books have been read probably over the last 3 years or so, and they just, whenever I get to them, whenever I have a sort of a spare hour or two, I'll pick out a book and I'll go through and I'll write down all the different quotes. So these aren't necessarily in order. There's ones that I've read before some of these that have made it through already or what have you. So some books I collect a lot of quotes out of, some less, and the ones that I collect less out of tend to move through this section a little bit more quickly, as you can imagine. So there are some favorites in this section as well, but these will move to various sections in my library. And then over in this section here, this section is directly above my desk. So this is the books that I want to reach for. So in here we find a lot of grimoires, a lot of different spell books, or you know, workbooks, if you will. These are the different ones that I want to reach for and gather information from for my work. So there are some encyclopedias here as well. You know, there are some just various different things that I will find myself grabbing for. Now, some of them are here, not because I particularly like the book, but because there was an idea or two within them that I wanted to then bring into my work, either to share with people or, you know, whatever it is. Often what I will do is I keep the books that I reach for most often on my actual desk, and they will, as they cycle out, because I find that I'm not reaching for them that often, they might, or most of them will end up in this sort of section here. But I am wanting to break this up now because there are many that I don't actually reach for, and I'm wanting to, as I said, break them up a little bit more specifically. So I've got quite a few books in this section here which are, you know, on tea leaf reading, for example, or on hoodoo or on house magic or things like that. So I'm just wanting to see how I want to break them up into sort of smaller sections. I'm just kind of feeling that vibe right now, so that's what I'm wanting to do. I've got a few different recipe books and things like that, some formula books here. So, and there's another tarot book here as well, actually. So I'll probably take that to the tarot books as well. Different things like that. So I really enjoyed this section of my library, and there are actually some books in here that I would consider some of my favorites as well, but I've put them over here too. And then up on the second shelf, so I have these two sort of large sections here. These are my to read books. So you can see it is growing from the last time that I showed this to you guys. So I broke them up into two sections recently just for aesthetic purposes, to be honest. I just wanted a little bit of a, it was just such a big section. So I have some titles here that I'm so excited to get to. I love looking at this section of my library, and it's like, a kid in a candy shop going like, ooh, what am I going to read next? So I just started my next book yesterday. So that is Rebel Witch. I reached for Rebel Witch. I had my son come in, and I said to him, oh, what do you think I should read next? Like, what are you picking off the shelf? And he saw like the big, bold, type of Rebel Witch on the side, and he was like, oh, read that one. That's the one that you should read next. So I was like, you know what? I am going to read that next because I've heard how amazing it is, and I think knowing Kellyanne and hearing about the book, it sounds like an amazing book for people who are particularly starting out in their craft, like a really, really positive, powerful message. And so I want to be able to recommend that to people, like knowing what's in the book, rather than just saying, oh, you should get this book without actually having read it. So I'm enjoying reading that now. I think 5 or 6 chapters in, and she's written them in really short, easy to digest chapters. It's really, really well written. So I'm enjoying that a lot. Anyway, but I've got a lot of other books up here that I'm so excited to get into. So there's at least, just looking at it right now, there's 20 that I could like I just want to read immediately, So I have this problem where like this is my, how some women buy lots of shoes, some witches buy lots of tarot decks. Like for me, it's books. That's where it's at for me. So I just keep bringing these books in, and I'm trying to just chill. But I admit, you guys, that I have a little bit of a problem. But all these books will be read. Mark my words, they will be read. So here you can see there's a variety of topics. We have Slavic witchery, there's some Brazilian magic in here, there is hoodoo, there's astrology and planetary magic, there's chaos magic, there's some Celtic magic, there's some sex magic, there's just all kinds of different topics represented in here. So I cannot wait to sink my teeth into more of these titles. And then over in this little section here, these are my herbal books. So I have a couple of herbal books, the ones that I reach for the most, on my desk as well. But these are the other herbal books. So here there's a few magical books, and there's also some medicinal books as well. I find I really like to learn about the medicine of a plant. And that's actually what kind of brought me into witchery as well, was like wild edibles and learning about that sort of thing. That's a passion from my pre-witchery days, if you will. So I like learning about the medicinal properties. I drink a lot of tea. I really like making myself herbal teas and things like that. So I love learning about that. And I find that it does help as a good base and grounding to know about the medicinal properties for then going into the magical purposes of things. So looking at how a plant looks, feels, tastes, and what it does for the body all helps to inform how you would use it in a magical sense as well. So it's quite a little section at the moment, really, considering how much I love herbs and how much I use them. But my other two books just, they prop me right up. They're really, really wonderful. And there are other herbal books I have my eye on, but some of them are very expensive. So this section will be growing, and there are actually a few herbal books in the to be read section as well. But yes, this is what I have at the moment in my beautiful little herbal section. And finally, up the top here, we have all manner of everything. So most of these books are ones that I have read years previous. So when I was kind of organizing my bookshelf, if they weren't in the favorite section, they kind of just got popped up the top here if they weren't ones that I was consistently reaching for. So there is all kinds of topics represented up here, but most of my pagan books are up here. So in the beginning of my practice, I was very much leaning towards the pagan sort of spirituality side of things. That's what really, really excited me, what flicked my switch. Whereas now I'm much more into working witchcraft, like I'm into spellcraft and practical witchery. I think you might have been able to tell from many of the titles I kind of have down in the other sections of my library. So up here are the older kind of books. So there's a lot of Celtic stuff up here. There's some kind of Wiccan based books. There is some astrology books up here as well. There is just all kinds of different things up here that I have. Some I've really enjoyed and some not so much over the years, but I still have them here. I haven't got rid of a lot of books in my time, a lot of my witch books. There's probably been only maybe 3 or 4 titles that I was just like, you know what, I'm not about this, so I'm going to move this along. Most of them I have kept up to this point because you never know, right? You never know. And I'm enjoying kind of growing my library. As I said, it's like it is a little bit of a hobby. So I'm enjoying kind of amassing books. But I have this thing where I really, really don't want a library filled with books that I haven't read. So, which is why I'm keeping the books that I haven't read in a separate section, because it's important to me to actually go through them. I don't want books just to look at. I want books that I have read, that I am gaining the knowledge that is within them, you know. Now, as you can see, there are some fiction books here too, some novels. So these are the ones that have actually really informed my craft. So I have the Practical Magic series here. I really love these books. I love the way that Alice Hoffman writes, and she has actually many other witch books as well, sort of standalone books that she's written that I've really enjoyed. But these ones I find they have actual witchery within them. There are just these little nuggets and moments that you can actually take. I mean, you can do this with any book, right? Like this is Chaos Magic principle, where you can take from whatever is sci-fi, you know, otherworldly, whatever, and you can actually bring it into your craft. But I'm talking on a very practical sort of folk magic level. There are nuggets within these books that I have taken into my own craft. Some herbal knowledge, you know, various teas and different things like that that are in these books. So really, I just love them so much for their story, but also for those things in them. So I have them in here. And I also consider these part of my occult library, these ones by Maria Kilfog. So these are Norse books, and they are non-fiction, but she's a scholar, and so she's written them very much, you know, from that place of deep understanding of Nordic magic. So I highly recommend these. They can be a little difficult to read because English is her second language, but I think she's done a really beautiful job of bringing these stories. I kind of wish that she had have written them in her native tongue and someone had have translated them for her, you know, but I think they're really valuable for what they are. They're quite expensive, but if you are into the Norse paganism or Norse magic or anything like that, I do recommend that you give them a look, because it kind of brings all of that to life in a story, you know, rather than just reading the old myths and things like that. And then I also have over here The Spiral Dance, which is one of my most favourite magical books. This is another novel, and it's one that I read right at the start of my practice, and I haven't actually gone back and read it again. I'm worried that I'm not going to love it as much, you know. It just touched me to my soul, this one. And this one is very, very pagan, as you can kind of see from the cover. So yes, I have that there as well because I love the cover, and it's one that I actually bought it by mistake. I thought I was buying Starhawk's The Spiral Dance, and this one arrived. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And then I read it and I was like, oh my god. And actually I don't really like The Spiral Dance by Starhawk, but I love this book. So yes, I have that there. So all sorts of books up here. I've got some art books as well. I've got The Artist's Way. I've got some psychology books. There's just all kinds of stuff up here. So, and at the very end, I have My Mama Earth, which is the book that I used to read to my son when he was little. You can do it in like a sing-song voice. It's really beautiful. I'll link a video down below where you can actually see the book being read and you sing along. It's just gorgeous. If you have little ones, I highly recommend this book. Get this for them. They will absolutely love it and you will love reading it to them. Thank you so much for joining me today to see the library tour. If you have any questions about books or if you want to see anything more closely, do let me know. But as I said, as we move forward, I'm going to be sharing more books with you, various recommendations and different things that I've read, because I think it's a wonderful thing that we have these resources at our fingertips. And sometimes when you're going on to have a look at, new books and things like that, it can be really difficult to know what to choose, especially these days when there are new books coming out every single day, like just multitudes of them. So it's like, what's good, what's not, and I think in every book, the disclaimer is, right, that there is always some nugget. Even in the books that I have not liked, that have been a slog to get through, there's always some little nugget in there, always, that you can bring into your own practice or learn from. But it is helpful to listen to what other people think and kind of get a little bit of maybe a flick through of a book and see what's kind of in there, to see if you want to invest your time and your money into that as well. So we will do more of that moving forward, but for now I'm wishing you all so much love and many, many blessings, and I'll be seeing you again soon. Over the